Welcome to Sunday worship at the First UU Society of Burlington, Vermont. Today is April 4th, 2021, and in the Christian calendar, it is the celebration of Easter. It is also the last day of the Jewish celebration of Passover. And my Hindu friends have recently enjoyed the colorful spring festival of Holi. Unitarian Universalists come from many traditions and spiritual backgrounds. We share a commitment to build a world community based on justice, compassion, and respect for our environment. And we encourage each other in a deep search for meaning in our lives. We here in Burlington acknowledge that the land on which our buildings are located is the unceded territory of the Western Abenaki peoples. To learn more about our society, please go to our website and feel free to contact us if you wish to learn more and to join in on our other online events. And today you are invited to join our coffee hour immediately after this Sunday's service. And remember, it's April 4th today. I am Melinda Lee, and I'm a member of the Worship Associate team here, and I'm thankful for all the other people who created this service. Reverend Patricia Hart, the musicians Sam Whitesell, James Stewart, and Wayne Schneider, our flower artist Peggy Derby, and our faithful and patient videographers. We are about to begin. So find a chalice and a candle if you wish. Get comfortable and come with us into a journey of worship.
Say the words with me. We kindle this chalice flame to remind ourselves of the light of truth, the warmth of community, and the fire of commitment. The call to worship this morning is from Katie Gelfand. We call forth the life of our faith by igniting our chalice. This spark of new beginnings invites us into a sacred space to reflect where we have been and where we are going, even knowing that this particular flame will intentionally end with our ritual extinguishing. We fear not its end, for we know with brave hearts that from every ending of our lives, we are sent forth to make a new beginning.
Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken like the first bird. Praise for the singing, praise for the morning, praise for them springing fresh from the word. The rain's new fall, sunlit from heaven, like the first dew fall on the first grass. Praise for the sweetness of the wet garden, sprung in completeness where God's feet have. the sunlight, mine is the morning, born of the one light, Eden salt plain. Praise with elation, praise every morning, God's recreation of the new day.
As we let this music settle into us, let us deepen together into a time of meditation. We will begin by sharing the joy and sorrow of our community, and then hold a time of silence. Let us hear these words of joy and sorrow for Sunday, April 4th, 2021. Sorrow and concern for the community of East Village Co-housing, enduring the challenge and disruption of several mental health crises among their residents. Please send light and love. Joy that my younger sister with stage 4 cancer successfully completed all radiation treatments. Now, while receiving chemotherapy, she is starting back with physical training and a mile-a-day walks when she can. Hopefully that her optimism and tenacity will provide sufficient ammunition to win her third battle with cancer. May the joys and sorrows of each be the joys and sorrows of all, reminding us of our shared humanity. Amen, and blessed be.
Easter is confusing. I always think, when I ponder that truth, of this story that was told some years ago by the Reverend Scott Axford. The truth is, he wrote, most of us are pretty confused about what metaphors and meanings to take from Easter Sunday, but not as confused as the kids in Mrs. Rogers' second grade class. She asked her eager young students about the meaning of Easter, and the hand of a little Episcopalian boy shot up. I know, he said confidently. Easter is when we put up a pine tree and decorate it with lights, wrap presents for each other, and sing lullabies to the baby Jesus. No, said the teacher, you've got Easter confused with Christmas. Does anybody else know? A little Catholic girl gave it a shot. Easter is when the whole house smells of turkey, and we watch football all day, and we give thanks for all of our relatives who come for dinner. No, said Mrs. Rogers. Someone must understand the meaning of Easter. A little Jewish boy in the class decided to give it a try. Easter is when we put up American flags and we go to a big parade and shoot off fireworks all night. No, 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 cried the exasperated teacher. Doesn't anyone know what Easter is about? Finally, a Unitarian Universalist child in the class raised her hand. Easter is when we remember that after a 3-year ministry among the Judean people, Jesus rode triumphantly into Jerusalem on a donkey, was put on trial by the Roman authorities for being a troublemaker, was crucified with 2 thieves, and finally buried in a cave. Yes, that's right, Susie, interrupted the relieved teacher. But then Susie continued. And after a couple of days, the rock gets rolled away and Jesus comes out. If he sees his shadow, we have 6 more weeks of winter. Easter is confusing. It falls near the spring equinox, so for some of us, the pagan celebrations of the earth's fertility are most meaningful. New life springing up in the midst of what seems like the death of winter. The roots of these ancient celebrations can be confusing too, though. One Unitarian Universalist source has provided this information. The goddess Estra, or Ostara, are names for the ancient goddess of fertility and the festival that celebrates the spring equinox. We don't know much with any reliability about the goddess Estra. Some legends say that she carries an egg, a symbol of fertility, of new life. Some descriptions say that Estra herself has the head of a hare and is the goddess of rabbits and birds. A popular myth says that the children of those long ago times presented eggs to the goddess as a gift in return for her bringing the spring. She was so touched by this gift that she recruited her minions, the rabbits, to return the eggs, only brightly colored now, to the children in baskets. And that is where the tradition of rabbits delivering eggs to children comes from. The Celts often dyed the eggs red to symbolize the blood of life. And while dyeing the eggs, women and children would make wishes for the coming year and then bury the eggs alongside a seedling in the ground to sustain and feed the plant. As the plants grew, the hope or wish would also take root. That was the thinking. It has been reported that when Christianity came to the Northern Isles, the priests and the bishops, not approving of such a pagan practice, encouraged the children to seek out and dig up the eggs. And then when the children brought them back to the church, the clergy would pay a small token for every egg the child brought. Hence, the Easter egg hunt was born. Easter means many things.
A tomb is no place to stay, be it a cave in the Judean hills or the dark cavern of the spirit. A tomb is no place to stay when fresh grass rolls away the stone of winter cold and valiant flowers burst their way to warmth and light. A tomb is no place to stay when each morning announces our reprieve and we know we are granted yet another day of living. A tomb is no place to stay when life laughs a welcome to hearts that have been away too long.
So today's the day, April 4th, the official ending day of this short, upbeat, and easy stewardship campaign that we're running to figure out how to build the budget for the coming year. Many of you have responded so far. It's a wonderful thing to see that most of you are continuing you're sustaining the congregation with your pledge. More than a quarter of the people who've responded so far have said that you'll actually give a little more. And many of you are continuing at the same level, which in this year is an achievement in and of itself. It's a good thing, and the day isn't over yet. The gap that we're looking at, we started out with a gap of over $33,000 that we are still hoping, that the stewardship campaign, your financial commitments, will close. That gap has come down to $28,000, and that was as of Friday morning, so it may be better by now. Your pledge, if you haven't yet confirmed an amount, if you haven't yet considered that 3% increase, if you just haven't gotten around to responding, I hope that you'll think about doing it today. I hope that you'll go online, look for the piggy bank that's on the website, confirm the amount of your financial commitment, make one new if you haven't done it before, or if you're really confused about how to do any of that, you can send us an email to Christina or Mary or just to the office at the congregation, and we will be back in touch and answer your questions. So that's exciting, and it's about next year. We're still doing this year. The Climate Justice team has taken responsibility for the Share the Offerings program for the month of April, an appropriate thing since we're about to celebrate Earth Day. And they have chosen 350 Vermont as the beneficiary that will get half of the offerings that are collected throughout all of these Sundays of April. The mission of 350 Vermont is to organize, educate, and support Vermonters to work together for climate justice. Wait, that's what we want to do, right? Organize, educate, and support Vermonters who are working for climate justice. Your gifts today and any day in April will make it possible for this congregation to make a difference in the work of 350 Vermont, which seems like an important thing to me, and I bet it is to you too. Your gifts to this morning's offering will now be most gratefully received. With gratitude, we dedicate these gifts in the service of our mission, to inspire spiritual growth, to care for each other and our community, to seek truth, and to act for justice. So here we are, friends, at Easter, the holiest, most joyous, most tragic, most confusing day in the Christian year. I am not talking about the factualness of the story. I'm talking about the meaning, the truth of it, what we might learn. When I say we, I mean Unitarian Universalists, I mean present and former Christians, I mean Jews and atheists and agnostics and Buddhists and humanists, all of us. The beginning of the story is sadly quite believable. Jesus had challenged the authority of the powers, the power of the Roman government, which was the occupying force, and even more, the power of religious authorities in his own Jewish tradition. He challenged these ideas and these people. He challenged them in his teaching and in the way he lived. He crossed boundaries that existed as a kind of a security fence around Jewish life. He deliberately broke laws, like the ones that declared women less important than men, and sick or disabled people, those from a different tribe, as inferior. Jesus' view of God's relationship to humanity was that it's not just some special people who are chosen, it's everyone. For a while, number of years, Jesus is easy to ignore, but the crowds keep growing. And then at Passover, when Jerusalem was already crowded with pilgrims, Jesus comes to town and calls attention to the hypocrisy and corruption in the Jewish temple itself. He makes a scene, and no one can ignore him anymore. So, in the way of life and of stories, Jesus is arrested. And then, because powerful people were afraid of him and his influence, and maybe because it seemed like a way to make the problem go away, Jesus is put to death. Afterward, the people in authority are left with a slightly bad taste in their mouths about having done this, but they justify it saying, what else could we have done? This is just the way things are in this dangerous world. Jesus' followers are stricken with grief and shocked and humiliated that they couldn't do anything to stop the crucifixion. Also, that they hadn't found the courage to stay with him while he died. And they were terrified that the same thing might happen to them. Maybe they justified their choices. What else could we have done? This is just the way things are in this lousy world. This is a depressing story, also quite predictable, and then it shifts. Some women, some friends of Jesus and the disciples go to the tomb, and the body is gone. The rock that had sealed the cave had been rolled away. The tomb is empty. The four Gospels tell the story differently, but they all start there with the mystery of the empty tomb and with confusion. Some of the disciples have no idea what's happening or what it means, and some begin to believe, maybe right away, Jesus is alive. And then that idea changes to God has brought Jesus back from death not to stay in the world, but to convince his followers that it isn't over. That the way that Jesus lived and what he taught is the way life is meant to be for everyone. Jesus had tried to tell the disciples all this before his arrest, but it all just sounded so unlikely, not least of all how they were supposed to continue on without him. It is easy to imagine their questions. What just happened? What's going to happen next? What should we do? And yet, even with all their questions and their fears, the story tells us that the followers went on to figure out what to do. They changed their own lives and in the process changed a whole lot of other people's lives too. So is this our story? Well, it's where our tradition came from. Without Christianity, there would have been no Unitarians or no Universalists. That many of us don't subscribe to the facts of the story does not actually distinguish us all that much. These days, many Christians aren't so sure about those parts either. To grasp the meaning in the story, it is not essential to believe that there was ever a man named Jesus, much less that he died and was resurrected in his own human body. What may matter more in the meaning of this story is a willingness to be surprised into hope, a susceptibility to believe that unlikely, unpredictable, seemingly miraculous things can happen, and in fact are happening all around us all the time. This is neither simple nor easy. I take some comfort in imagining how not easy it was for the disciples back then. The Gospels are really clear about their confusion, which reminds us how often miracles are accompanied not by faith, but by disbelief and fear and mutual recrimination. As far as we know, the disciples, the followers, were good people, but there is little indication in the gospel stories that any of them felt hopeful at all. Why should they? Nobody expected Jesus to rise from the dead. None of his friends went up to him during his trial or while he was hanging on the cross to say, "Hey, don't worry about this. We got it. Everything's going to be all right. We'll get through this in better shape than ever." They didn't say it because they didn't believe it. There was no reason to be hopeful. The bad guys had won. The good people, whoever they were, they'd already lost. It seemed like the end of everything because it was. And then, unbelievably, impossibly, contrary to reason and common sense, it turns out not to be the end at all. Life comes back again. Here's what's at the heart of this story. It is about the strength of the powers, the wealth and influence and government that is so strong. But in the end, it is not strong enough to kill life, especially not the unkillable life of compassion and love and justice. Even when we don't know how to hope for it, life and hope come back again. What just happened? What's going to happen next? And what should we do? Some stories are worth telling over and over, not because we forget what happens, but because we need to be reminded of the subversive truths that humanity is capable of, even human beings like us. We need to feel inspired to unreasonable hope. Which reminds me of a little bit of a story that I will end with today. This is from The Lord of the Rings. It is the last book in the series. And at this point in the story, it doesn't matter if you've read it or not. You just need to know that Frodo, who is the hero in the story, is completely exhausted and terrified, but he's been terrified for so long he can't remember when he wasn't, but at this point he's just wanting to give up, wanting to turn back. There's no way through. And his friend, Sam Gamgee, who I think is my favorite character in the whole story, his loyal friend who stays with Frodo even when Frodo is horrible to him, Sam says this: "It's like in the great stories, Mr. Frodo, the ones that really mattered. Full of darkness and danger they were, and sometimes you didn't want to know the end, because how could the end be happy? How could the world go back to the way it was when so much bad had happened? But in the end, it's only a passing thing, this shadow. Even darkness must pass. A new day will come, and when the sun shines, it'll shine out the clearer. Those were the stories that stayed with you that meant something, even if you were too small to understand why. But I think, Mr. Frodo, I do understand. I know now folks in those stories had lots of chances of turning back, and they didn't. They kept going because they were holding on to something. And Frodo turns to him and asks, "What are we holding on to, Sam?" And Sam says that there is some good in the world, and it's worth fighting for. So it is, and so may it be. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with the world until we are together again. Today's benediction is from the Reverend Patrick O'Neill, who wrote, "Easter is an impossible story, a story for anyone who loves life so much that they pray for more life to follow. Easter is a story for people who can envision a loving divinity that will not be conquered by evil. It's a story that never dies, of immovable objects tossed aside, of happy endings in a tragic world, of miracles, of faith rewarded and vision restored and hope justified. That's what Easter is. May it be so for us. Amen, and go in peace.